The most annoying thing just happened. I shot like half an hour, something, of Echo Forest footage for you guys. It was even interesting. I wiped at one point, but saved the team with Bio's hammer. And then right as I was about to turn it off, I lost all the footage. So pretty grumpy right now. And instead of shooting it all, I'm going to put the skill videos up. When I mention later in the video that we're in Echo, obviously we're not. It's alive. We'll do it tomorrow.
Let's see what we got here. Okay. Alright, there you are. Pull back a little bit. There we go. Cue our little friend.
Those who face eternity easily forget what a lifetime means, what an ending means.
You know it doesn't have to be this way.
No, Kunavine, it does. They need me.
Welcome to End of Dragons Daily. Footage in the background today is going to be of some Guild Wars 1. I knew I wanted to do the original game and particularly factions footage for ages now. It's just today I finally feel inspired about it. I'm going to be around the Echo Forest as we originally saw it. And not because that's specifically the region that we're going to be discussing today, but because it's kind of my big inspiration and what I want to see most emphasis on with the new Ranger Elite specialization. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I've gathered a bunch of messages from you guys about it, and I'll kind of canvas a little bit. We can probably get multiple episodes out of this, so there'll just be an opening selection here for today. And I want to open up as well and say, look, I've kind of gone on the record here and said, Ranger, I'm pretty much uninspired about to a large degree, but I do think there are certain safe things that they can do. I think there's a very safe weapon choice for Rangers that they can do, particularly even since core. I think there's a certain weapon people have been looking for. We'll come up with a comment on that in a second. While I think there are a ton of themes they could go with, you could have like a pirate style thing, you could have like a shaman kind of primal sort of thing, you could have a sort of survivalist. There's loads of stuff, themes there might be good ideas for. I'm not really sure about one super well bound to Cantha. We'll see what you guys have to say on that. And for mechanics, well, I think there's some really good ideas. One that I haven't seen many of you guys talk about, but I think would be really cool and I'd be excited about, is the idea of a reverse Soul Beast. And so what do I mean by that? Well, the Soul Beast takes the pet into the Ranger, and the pet kind of buffs you. You are the character. A reverse Soul Beast mechanic would be the idea that this new elite specialization allows you to inhabit the pet. And we get kind of this thing you see in a lot of other MMOs where we are actually directly controlling the pet that we have, and see what ArenaNet can do with that. Now, this idea I've just given you guys, the reverse Soul Beast, is actually something that would take a lot of work and thought to really round out into a whole specialization. But I think that would be amazing, and anything that emphasizes the diversity of the pets we already have available would be fantastic. You're also got to remember, you're listening to someone right now who's quite a big fan of the tonic system and exploring all those animations and embodying those various creatures. I think you'd get kind of a similar feel out of a mechanic like that. So those are just some of my opening ideas. Let's see what you guys have to say. First, we've got Eric, who says ArenaNet teased the new Ranger Elite spec years ago. They're going to be commandos. They get a rifle and kits for their utilities. I've seen people message this a few times, and I actually think this is obviously a joke, right? For anyone out of the loop, back when Guild Wars 2 was coming out, they very, very irregularly, slowly revealed what all the professions were. Like, there were big gaps between when we heard about the Elementalist till when we heard about the Warrior and so on. And, like, those last few professions were real mysteries for a long time. It just so happened that as we were in this kind of news cycle, April Fools came by, and the devs did a big thing where they did, like, a full profession reveal with, like, the proper concept art and an update to the official webpage and all this stuff that turned out to actually just be fake, and it was the Commando. It had like trailers for it, it had voiceover, the whole kabang. Later on, we did eventually see the engineer kind of felt very Commando-ish, and to be honest, if we saw a Commando finally come into Guild Wars 2, I think it would be an engineer elite specialization. But it's a funny idea. I do think that you can kind of corrupt that nature idea of the Ranger and do something with like demolitions and so on, but we get into this weird discussion where it's like, surely that's just the engineer class now, and there's too much overlap, and it's not very fun to do. But just the general idea, it doesn't have to be attached to Ranger, but maybe that we might see a Commando one day. You know, if they go with enough elite specializations, if we're 27 down the line, I would not, so to speak, take it off the table. Next, we get kind of a lengthy one from Terrafast. Now, the thing with these elite specialization discussions is some of you guys have gone really crazy with it and sent me walls of text 4 times, 5 times, 6 times the length of even this. And as much as I'd love to spend half an hour discussing every little element of your fan-made elite specialization, I kind of got to keep it snappy, and I want to get through lots of comments. So this is about the limit, I would say, to what I'm happy to present on the show. Terrafast says, petrification theme challenge accepted. A Geomancer. Now, lots of you guys said Geomancer. Knows there is more to nature than just living things. This thing focuses on the seemingly destructive parts of nature: erosion, fossilizing, petrification, decay, and rot. I don't know about decay and rot. I think we're getting a bit close to Necro, maybe, but I can see it. Weapon, a scepter. An auto themed around erosion, doing extra damage, or condies to immobilized foes. Probably has the 3 as an immob. Has a spirit basilisk as part of the attack animation. The class mechanic, you can only select one pet. The trade-off being the swap is being replaced by an avatar summon that is decided by your Grandmaster. One could be wind and water erosion and plays with vulnerability. Another might be petrification, works with movement effects, stuns or daze. The last could be more acidic and works off of poison. So when we start talking about acid, I think that could work on a Ranger Elite spec, but again, I don't know whether it's really the stone idea. I think acid, once again, is another new concept. You could also look at the engineer again and how alchemy is baked into the engineer. I've long said this. Guild Wars 2 launched with 8 professions. It could have launched with more than that, because sometimes they kind of built in multiple different classes all into one. Like the engineer is actually multiple different classes. I think they could have done an alchemist profession, like a full-on profession years ago, but instead they chose to just make it a single line. Now that kind of makes sense to me, that we could have someone who really plays with a lot more tonics and acids and stuff like that, and caustic substances as an engineer elite spec. Utilities, short of adding a new type, they could see physical or manipulation be leveraged here. While not perfect, fits both. Could be used to describe the corrosive and altering nature of the Geomancer. Inspiration, I actually considered the overlap that the Ranger has with both Ellie and Necro without straying too far into those classes. I could see a representative NPC in a series of caverns, studying the way rock erodes and reforms, extrapolating on those ideas to create abilities to destroy their foes, for even the mightiest mountain would eventually be ground to dust by wind and water. Now, I love that you've added this little detail of the NPC that we'd actually find in game somewhere. I definitely imagine this would be like a Kurzik character for sure. And you got to remember as well, if we're doing like a Geomancer that's somehow bound or, you know, drawing from the powers of the Echovald, I think Amber would maybe sneak its way in a little bit. Don't forget, Amber was kind of the magical substance, this miracle substance that you could do things with. And I think any kind of like Ranger Elite spec looking at that would be dealing with the Amberite a lot. As an addition here to the whole petrification thing, we've got Flura here, who says Rangers definitely have an earth theme, a land use element. They've got the muddy terrain skill, the signet of stone skill, the stone spirit skill, and the quicksand skill. The current elite specs have not tapped into. Yeah, quicksand's kind of funny, you know. They could have done something like that with Path of Fire and the Soul Beast, but the more sand-oriented one ended up being the Scourge. I think the Scourge, thematically, and there's like a concept that burning sands and stuff, did very well, so that's kind of fine to me. Next, we got a really wild take here, whose mechanic is kind of similar to what we just read a second ago. World says, my idea for the Ranger Elite spec is the Bell Summoner, or the Pact Keeper. I can't think of a better name. The new weapon is a main or offhand focus skinned to look like a bell of some kind, ideally one with a miniature temple bell aesthetic. You befriended a Kirin spirit, and you may summon it to your aid by its bell. Summoning the Kirin is a transformation state similar to the Celestial Avatar or the Soul Beast's fusion mode. During this time, the Kirin either replaces your animal companion, or you actually mount it and ride it while fighting, unlikely. Either way, the Kirin gives you some powerful boons or abilities. Depending on the power level of the Kirin spawn, could be static, like Soul Beast Fusion, or temporary, like the Druid's Celestial Avatar. In concept, though, you get a Final Fantasy-style ability that helps you in combat, and I love the flavor of a bell tone ringing whenever you summon the Kirin. Really infusing these elite specs into the setting of Camphor could open the opportunity for quest-like adventures to initially unlock or complete the elite spec, ideally something not too long or attentive, more to infuse the spec with the flavor and the lore of relevance. For this spec, I love the idea of the Kirin's friendship as a reward for helping it, waking it from slumber, being sealed away, or even cleansing its Temple of Corruption dragon minions. But you could maybe infuse these quests with whatever collections are associated with the elite specs that usually unlock after you complete them. Well, look, on the subject of creating a more elaborate mechanism through which we unlock the elite specs, I wouldn't expect that of End of Dragons. I think that, I mean, they could do that. That could be a big feature they end up throwing in. But I think it's likely they'll just stick with a hero point idea and you spend those. There is obviously, I would expect a collection associated with each elite spec that does eventually give you the weapon. And sure, maybe they can go further with those. They tend to be kind of boring. In Heart of Thorns, they were kind of boring. In Path of Fire, they were kind of boring. So maybe they'll be much better as quests that allow you to explore the elite spec, but they won't gate the elite spec. Does that make sense? So it won't be you do a quest where you find a Kirin and only now you can use it and you unlock the elite spec. I think you will already have access to it and you're just learning about it later maybe. This is a really weird take. I think this is such a out there idea. It could kind of fit on any profession, but, and I'm not really sure, to be honest, guys, that I like the idea of constantly doing Reaper forms or Hollow modes or Photon Forge modes, sorry, or Soul Beast modes. These kind of toggles into a new form. I don't know. I think that I'm a little bit scared that this next batch of elite specializations are going to do way too much of that, because I think there is a line in which it gets a little bit boring and a little bit overdone, and especially for the Ranger that already has two mechanisms a bit like that. I kind of don't want to see that. But the idea of actually getting another companion, tons of you guys have. I don't know whether I really want to see Rangers become too minion-y or whatever with their new elite spec. So I much prefer the idea of trading the pet out for a new companion. But then I kind of also don't like that, because then you're just getting rid of all the massive pool of pets that we currently have for customization and de-emphasizing pets, which is not what I want. I do appreciate how if you add a new companion to a new Ranger Elite spec, you can have it key into all the traits, like the Beast Mastery traits and stuff, so it gets that nice cohesive feel. But I want to emphasize the pets themselves, personally. And finally, on the idea of riding it, I actually think this is really cool. I think the idea of like a Cavalier, and maybe it'll be Ranger associated, is really badass. And, I mean, I'm not suggesting they'll do like a Pokemon Gigantamax style thing, where all of your pets just now are big enough that you can ride them. So you can ride around on your Devourer, and you can ride around on your Sylvan Hound, and so on. But something that allows you to, like, mount up a bit as a matter of combat. After Path of Fire, you know, a lot of that infrastructure is kind of there, and those ideas are there. Maybe it's more possible than you think. Maybe. And it's definitely a really enticing idea, even better maybe than my idea of being able to inhabit the pet itself. And yes, I can't deny that this whole idea of ringing the bell for the Kirin reminds you of Zendai Jun from the first game, is all very, very Canthan feely. Remember, as much as we are thinking about Cantha and trying to tie these to Cantha, you got to consider that for like POF, they didn't adhere to it perfectly. And not even Heart of Thorns. You know, Heart of Thorns had stuff like the Scrapper in it, which really didn't have anything to do with the jungle, but it was there anyway. So, you know, I don't think it's a requirement, but it would be cool. Next, we've got Paige Arnold, who says, and my idea for a Ranger spec is a big game hunter. Now, don't forget that big game hunting is kind of the Dragon Hunters thing. In fact, don't they actually have a trait literally called Big Game Hunter? So, like, I like the idea for the Ranger, but they might go in a slightly different theme. They say instead of having two pets you can swap between, you'd have one pet, like the ones we currently have, and an elite pet. Here you go, another like extra spawns idea someone has here. Elite pets would be a new species like Doliac that are bigger and stronger than regular pets, but can only be swapped in for a limited time. Other species could be worms, like from the Shiver Peaks in Alona, or maybe Kirin from Cantha. Their new weapon could be rifles that act closer to shotguns, which might step on engineers' toes, and then they could use tricks like concealing themselves with leaves or stealth or taunting enemies with bait. They'd fit a pet-focused niche that I feel like is lacking in Ranger Elite options. I agree that there's kind of a nice, a bit of a lack of pet niche. even with the soul beast, so to speak, because the soul beast in a lot of ways leans into the pet, but also eliminates the pet, so it's kind of a funny one. I don't necessarily hate this rifle idea, though, by the way. I alluded at the start of this video of one weapon that I think would work well on Ranger, and I think it is rifle. And the reason I say that is because, look, the word Ranger for this profession does not mean this guy is a ranged fighter. They're talking about a ranger like a wanderer, like an outdoorsman, like a traveler. They're talking about ranger like Aragorn is a ranger, okay? And I think many of us know that and were even bored by that explanation. But the thing is, a ton of people came into Guild Wars 2 and to this day come to Guild Wars 2 and they completely misinterpret that name. Maybe they're kids, it doesn't matter, but they misinterpret that name and they immediately get disappointed when they realize they can't equip a rifle. You know, you see it all the time. And so I think a lot of people kind of have this lingering thing where they're like, I kind of want a rifle finally. So, and you know, it's kind of a big two-handed thing. So I think rifle's a really good choice. And even if you made it like a shotgun-y thing, I don't think it necessarily overlaps with the engineer. A shotgun-y idea is probably one of the best niches you can go with because, you know, if you're going long distance single target stuff, you're really treading on the Deadeye's toes, right? And the warrior's toes to a certain degree as well. Shotgunny, we're only really treading on blunderbuss, one ability. The engineer uses it in like a tricky way. You know, they have mobility, they have knockbacks, they have a net, and yeah, they've got a bit of a blunderbuss, but you could definitely go further with it. You could even do like a rifle with like a bouncing idea or something. I don't know. But then going rifle with ranger definitely moves away from the naturey themes, sorry. So I don't know whether the devs will do it. I just think it's always been a safe bet. And this idea of extra big beasts to fight alongside us, you know, maybe that's not a big game hunter. That's like a big game befriender, right? So maybe that's another theme that gets rolled in there. Jesus Christ, we're already 20 minutes in. All right, so the last message for now is going to be Retro Guy 200. Who says, can you imagine a Ranger Elite spec that's more stealth focused? The ability to shadow step between tree lines in the Echovald Forest would be quite fun. So just on that concept, yes, I like that visual, or even shadow stepping around the rooftops. But here's the thing, Imamori says, didn't a medium armored thief with its multiple specs cover that niche already? This is the thing that's going to start happening a lot more with Elite specializations. Well, I think you have to be a bit bolder and a bit weirder. Like, as weird as that Kirin idea was earlier, it at least doesn't step at all on anyone else's toes to a certain degree. It's funny, I'm thinking right now about, you know, shadow stepping across the rooftops. But here's the thing. One of the very first skill videos they ever showed us of Thief is a dual-wielding pistol thief climbing around on the rooftops in Crater. And, you know, we've kind of already seen that. And obviously, just the idea of adding stealth doesn't mean this is also going to be a gun toter. But I'm not sure I fully buy it. Something about climbing, though, and using vines and stuff to move around in the trees. They might do something with that. Also, you've got to think a bit more about Canthan-specific lore. I don't know whether I've shown it in the footage here, as you've been watching the Echovald Forest. But what about, like, the specific denizens of the Echovald Forest? Like the Gaki and stuff. What if it's some kind of elite specialization that looks at those a bit more and draws from their power? That would be perhaps another restorative-styled creature, wouldn't it? Well, there's some offensive Gaki as well there. Something maybe a little bit more spellcasty. I'm not entirely sure. So there you go, guys. I'm going to continue gathering rangery comments. Don't worry, if you've still got ideas, if you have further inspiration, drop them down below. I also have some other miscellaneous comments, so a ton of stuff to talk about on Ender Dragons Daily over the next couple of days. I'm really glad, guys. Can I just say, I haven't said it for a while. We're like 2.5 months into this show now. And, you know, it could be a long wait still for the expansion. I hope you guys are still finding it entertaining. It's very cool that we have this audience every day that's coming along and talking about this fun stuff. Hopefully we'll make the gap feel as short as possible. Cheers, guys. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you very, very soon on the next one.
Like a quaggan.
You want to race and find out? See ya.
Worst date ever.
Oh, heck, that don't look right. Let me fix this here. Here they come.
Confirm we have your target.